Hello everyone, welcome to Season 3 of Before the Kickoff, the Daily Iowans weekly pregame show and your #1 source for Hawkeye sports. I'm Brady Barrand.
And I'm Colin Carruthers. We're going to break down everything you need to know before the kickoff.
Colin, Iowa football is officially back this weekend, but it hasn't exactly been a summer in Cabo for the Hawkeyes.
No, it absolutely hasn't. While that would have been nice, a lot of stuff was going on here, and some big news broke last week. Iowa's head coach Kirk Ferentz, along with wide receivers coach John Budmeyer, will be suspended for this weekend's matchup with Illinois State. The suspension comes from a Level 2 NCAA infraction due to Ferentz allegedly contacting quarterback Cade McNamara before he was officially in the portal. The suspensions are self-imposed by Iowa, and they will run from 12:01 a.m. Friday until 12:01 a.m. on Sunday.
That's right, and newly promoted assistant head coach Seth Wallace is set to run the show this weekend for the Hawkeyes as the interim head coach. But despite this being the first Hawkeye game played without Hayden Fry or Kirk Ferentz coaching the team, it's business as usual for the Hawkeye players.
This team really loves Coach Ferentz, and we're going to rally behind him.
I mean, obviously it's going to be different, but you know, Coach he's still going to be there with us in spirit. You know, he's doing a great job, put together a great plan for us this week. So it's business as usual. Like I said, obviously it'll be different without him being there, but at the end of the day, we got a game to win, and that's all we're focused on right now.
And for Ferentz, he's got confidence that his absence won't negatively affect the team.
You know, I made a mistake, so I've owned it, stepped on a line. I think the line was a little bit cloudy, a little bit blurry, but nonetheless, I stepped on it. So that is what it is. And just like if, a player were hurt or, we all go on. We just go on and keep pushing on.
Now, Colin, despite that initial stumble into the season, it hasn't been all bad for Iowa this offseason.
No, absolutely not. A lot of good things to look for from this summer. And the name of the game this season for Iowa is the defensive continuity. They're bringing back 8 of their starters on that top 10 defense from last season, and they look to continue that dominance in 2024.
I just feel like our program teaches detail, and Coach Parker's obviously not going to let us slack. So I feel like the sky's the limit. Excited to get out there, excited to be a part of another good Iowa defense.
Now, flipping sides of the ball, the offense brought in a high-profile quarterback from Northwestern, Brendan Sullivan. Now, Sullivan has experience at a Big Ten school starting, but last year Sullivan only completed 68% of his passes and threw for 6 touchdowns while also throwing 2 interceptions in 8 games played. He also had a little wiggle to him. He ran for 160 yards on the ground while also getting 2 touchdowns rushing. And with Deacon Hill moving on to Utah Tech, transferring out of Iowa, the Hawkeyes did need some depth behind McNamara.
Yeah, I love Iowa's tradition. The tradition of successful football, of tough, gritty guys that find a way to get the job done. And I feel like I fit that description pretty well. And as soon as I took a visit here and stepped on campus and I got the feel for who people are off the field, I knew this was the place for me.
Colin, of course, we can't talk about new faces without talking about the newest of them all, new offensive coordinator Tim Lester. Now, Lester is coming off a fresh stint with the Green Bay Packers where he was a senior analyst, and before that he worked for 6 seasons as Western Michigan's head coach. Here is how Hawkeyes feel about Lester in the new look offense.
Coach Lester's super smart, and he likes to get everybody involved, which is pretty cool to see, but it's always nice to get something different. I think what he brings to this offense is just a lot of energy and passion and love for the game, which is really cool. And I think that's what we needed, and a lot of belief. I think he believes in every single one of us, and he thinks that we can be one of the best offenses in the country.
I think it's awesome, how much knowledge that our overall offense has gained over the course of the last couple months. I mean, for the majority of these guys, they've only ran one offense since they've been in college. I mean, other than the few transfers that we have.
You mentioned it a little bit, Colin, but despite bringing in a transfer quarterback, they still have Cade McNamara listed as the #1 starting quarterback on Week 1's depth chart, and Cade says he's 100% ready to go this weekend. But the first depth chart of the year did have a few surprises on it. DITV's news director Johnny Voltman is live in the studio with more on those new faces.
Yes, guys, after an offseason of injuries, suspensions, and transfers, the Iowa Hawkeyes finally have their Week 1 depth chart solidified. Starring on the always talked about offense, QB1 will be Cade McNamara, who is coming off a season-ending torn knee ligament last year. McNamara beat out Northwestern's transfer quarterback Brendan Sullivan after creating some buzz, but was unable to secure the starting role. Marco Lainez will be QB3. The biggest surprise is who's leading the backfield. Sophomore Kamari Moulton will be taking handoffs as running back 1, leapfrogging returning Hawkeyes LaShawn Williams and Caleb Johnson.
He's a great guy, great player, better person off the field, laughable guy, jokes around. But when it comes to being on the field, he takes it serious. He's a great player, big play guy, so excited to see how he does.
Kamari's done really well. Super excited for him, and just going to go out there and run the ball well and do what the team needs.
The starting 3 receivers for the Hawks are lacking in experience. Only Northwestern transfer Jacob Gill has recorded a catch. In a new era offense for the Hawks, we'll see if that changes week 1. The team will have to rely on senior tight end Luke Lachey to guide the unproven receiving corps as McNamara's go-to guy. While the defense is returning almost all of their starters, there were still a few positions up for grabs this summer. One of the bigger surprises on defense comes from TJ Hall getting the starting corner job opposite of Jamari Harris. John Nestor was listed as the starter in the spot earlier in the summer, but going into week 1, Hall has the job.
Probably just a little bit of consistency, and it's gone back and forth. It's a little bit like the running back position. Difference is that most of those guys have been available. The 4 corners have been competing and practicing, so probably a little consistency thing, but it's still really close.
No, I think TJ is someone who came in early, so he got a jump on everything about 2 years ago, and now I feel like it's all coming together for him. Physically, mentally, it's excited for his opportunity to see him play Saturday.
And how could I forget to shed some light on the special teams? Another Aussie freshman, Rise Draken, has big air to fill, taking over Torrey Taylor's spot as punter. Drew Stevens will be returning to kick in some threes and kickoffs for the Hawkeyes. While it may seem like there was a lot of changes to the Hawkeyes, for the most part, they have kept a solid core during a turbulent off-season. Now, of course, a microscope is going to be under the new Tim Lester offense, as there are a lot of new and unproven targets that this offense is going to use. And of course, everybody will be watching them throughout the season.
Yeah, Johnny, a lot of eyes will be on that new Iowa offense, but this first matchup should be a good chance for them to comfortably see what they're going to be working with this year.
That's right. First week facing an FCS opponent in Illinois State that continued to fall short in conference play last season should allow them to knock off a little rust. Illinois State started off 3-1 last year, 2-1 out of conference, but then hit a roadblock, losing 3 of their next 4 games within the Missouri Valley Conference, putting them in 8th place out of the 12 teams in the conference. At the end of the year, they finished with a 6-5 record. However, when you look at those games, when they won defiantly. They were great wins by great margins on the scoreboard. Then look at the games they lost. 4 out of those 5 games were lost by no more than 3 points. Just a field goal shy from an 8-10 win season. Why is this? They have good weapons offensively, and they move the ball well.
They have very productive wide receivers, very productive running back. They throw the ball, get the ball out quick. They didn't have many sacks last year.
And that respect is warranted. But the issue, Colin, is that it wasn't consistent from the Redbirds last year. Where they were consistent, though, was the defense. The defense played their job, and they did it well. They either won games by a lot, or they kept them really close. But the question was, would the offense score? And this year, the defense is still a strong point of this team.
I know that they got a DNA. They've got an identity. They have a good defensive coordinator, defensive staff, and I know that they play defense the right way, and they play hard. And I respect the hell out of them.
They run a unique defense, unique tilt coverage. So just getting accustomed to that, different looks, different safety rotations.
And so, Brady, it sounds like they're going to be coming out hungry. And you mentioned they have some really good talent on this team, and rightfully so. They have some really good returners on this Redbirds team who could really spark a light for them. Let's take a look first at the offensive highlight reel for the Redbirds. It's junior wide receiver Daniel Sobkowitz, following in his brother's footsteps playing collegiate football. One of them previously played at Illinois State, but Daniel Easley, one of the best returners in all of FCS football. He's a preseason FCS second-team All-American, following up a breakout season his sophomore year, where he recorded 68 catches for 933 yards and 10 touchdowns. I mean, that's unheard of. It's great numbers there, as he averaged 84.8 receiving yards per game, which ranked 13th in all of FCS football last year. He's also rated as a top 15 FCS wide receiver by Pro Football Focus. some great numbers for him, but even so, flip things over defensively. I want to highlight a guy who might be overlooked a little bit. He was really good for the Redbirds all year, but he started to break out in their last few games. It's starting quarterback Mark Canon Jr., who had 33 tackles by himself, 46 total tackles on the season. That ranks 7th on the team. However, he did lead the team with 3 interceptions that came in the last 4 games. Now, these also happened to be games where Canon Jr. set season-high totals for himself in solo tackles, so he really turned on the Jets in his last few games. He seemed to really settle in, read offensive sets better, and I think if he's able to pick things up where he left off last season and take what he was figuring out into Saturday, he could cause some serious issues for this Iowa offense.
Now, Colin, with a new football season comes a new batch of kid captains. This is the 16th year Iowa has had kid captains before each game, and here's a little bit more on this week's kid captain.
Leading off the kid captain roster, 8-year-old Carter Schmidt is ready to take the field. At only 9 months, Carter was diagnosed with an extremely rare type of cancer that only affects 1 in 1.2 million children.
He was diagnosed with JMML, which is juvenile myelomonocytic leukemia, where he has a lot of white blood cells and not enough reds.
Carter was brought to the Stead Family Children's Hospital in search of an immediate bone marrow transplant. After a long worldwide search, a perfect match was finally found.
The fact that someone would want to donate to someone that they don't even know is amazing. It was a perfect 12 out of 12 match.
3 months after the transplant, Carter was discharged from the hospital and began his healing journey while growing into his expressive and energetic self.
He was so excited. He's like, yay! And like jumping up and down. He's very excited about football and being out on the field.
Despite the obstacles he faced, Carter takes advantage of any fun activities such as swimming, biking, crafting, and building Legos. He continues to visit the Stead Hospital every 2 years for checkups and is considered cured. Now, instead of waving down to the field, he gets to be on the turf himself, waving up. From the University of Iowa, Elise Gann, DITV.
This year, the Big Ten is bigger than ever with the 4 Pac-12 teams joining, which means there's even more action than ever before. Let's bring in DITV's sports director, AJ Reester. Now, AJ, what are some games that we can look forward to this weekend with the new-look Big Ten?
Yeah, Brady, you said it. With all these new teams, there are more big games than ever before, especially in the Big Ten. And this weekend, we get our first look starting off in Morgantown, West Virginia, where the Mountaineers are set to host the 8th-ranked Penn State Nittany Lions in a game that looks like it should be an absolute blowout. But do not let the rankings deceive you. West Virginia is returning 15 starters from last year, including starting quarterback Garrett Green, who is 2nd in the nation in rushing touchdowns for a quarterback. But on the other hand, the big, bad Nittany Lions come in as the 8th-ranked team in the nation after losing just 2 games in the regular season last year. And they were busy this summer landing a massive wide receiver transfer in former 5-star recruit Julian Fleming, who returns to Pennsylvania after spending the last 4 years at Ohio State. The Big 12 is wide open for West Virginia, and Penn State is trying to stay with the big dogs at the top of the Big Ten. And it is a great way to kick off the new Big Ten season. Penn State is an 8-point favorite in this one. Now for some new blood in the Big Ten. The 23rd ranked team in the country, the USC Trojans, are traveling to Death Valley to take on 13th ranked LSU to open up their first season in the Big Ten. USC is coming off a disappointing season after Caleb Williams decided to stick around for one more season, but ended up losing 5 games. The biggest question marks surround the defense. One of the worst scoring defenses in the country, allowing more than 34 points per game last year. They'll have the tough task of taking on an LSU offense that averaged more than 45 points per game and was the #1 scoring offense in the nation last year behind Heisman winner Jaden Daniels. Garrett Nussmeier will be the new man to try and fill the shoes of Daniels in his high-powered offense after splitting time with Max Johnson and Jaden Daniels until Daniels took over as the starter last year. There are lots of questions for both squads entering the season, and those questions could be answered after this weekend. LSU is a 4-point favorite in this one. And finally, we have one game outside the Big Ten with some big implications week 1. The 14th ranked Clemson Tigers are hitting the road to Athens, Georgia to take on the #1 team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs. The ACC has been pretty weak, as we saw last year when an undefeated Florida State team was left out of the college football playoffs, and this year is no different. Clemson only has 2 other ranked opponents after this game against Georgia, so if they want to get back into contention for a national title, they're going to need a good showing this weekend against the best team in the nation. On the other hand, Georgia is a massive favorite and is returning massive starters, including quarterback Carson Beck, who took over as the full-time starter last year and threw 24 touchdowns and nearly 4,000 yards. Massive implications for 2 highly ranked teams with hopes of making the college football playoffs at the end of the season. The Bulldogs are 13.5-point favorites in this one. That's a look around the Big Ten and the country. Boys, what games are you most excited for this weekend?
Thanks, AJ. I am definitely most excited for that USC-LSU game. We got 2 brand new quarterbacks and a couple of power programs going head-to-head.
Yeah, and I would say another one that AJ mentioned, that Penn State versus West Virginia game, a good rivalry being brought back. I've got some family back in West Virginia, so hoping the Mountaineers pull off that upset. And, I'm just really excited to see what things happen with Week 1.
That's right, Colin, but now it is that time of the show. That's right, it's predictions time. But with this being a brand new year, we have to stake our names on season-long predictions. First, let's bring Johnny back in to give us his season-long prediction, his breakout Hawkeye of the year, and, of course, his score prediction for Week 1.
Yeah, Brady, and when looking at the Iowa schedule, I think of one thing, a jack in the box. They'll be starting off the season just relaxing, jamming in heaven, there is no beer. But at any given time, a loss in the box can pop out of nowhere. We saw that happen last year with Minnesota, and Northwestern and Nebraska, they are both always pesky to play. With travel and new teams, I have the Hawks going 8-4 with losses to Ohio State, Wisconsin, UCLA, and Michigan State. For my game prediction, I was at the home of the Illinois State Redbirds in Bloomington, Illinois over the summer. It's a nice, quiet place, but I think they are in for a rattling welcome to Kinnick. They'll hang around for the first half, but the Hawks will stop stumbling around on offense and walk their way to a 27-13 victory. And Brady and Colin, while my predictions might not be right, there is someone among us that is really good at picking picks.
That's right, Johnny. AJ had a great season last year in the picks, and here he is now to give his picks for this season.
Yeah, guys, if I were you, I'd be a little bit worried because I have some fire picks for this season. I also have some high hopes for this season for the Iowa Hawkeyes, but with so many question marks still on the offensive side of the ball, I believe the Hawks will be going 9-3 and just missing the college football playoffs. With Ohio State in the schedule, that is always a tough draw, but the rest of the Big Ten also got stronger, and so did their in-state rival Iowa State. I don't know about you guys, but that game has me more worried than in years past. But for my breakout player of the year, I see running back Kamari Moulton having a big season. I know that might be a lot of people's picks, especially since he was the surprise RB1 on the latest depth chart, but he looked phenomenal in the preseason and at the open practice. With how well the offensive line has developed the last 2 years, expect whoever is in that RB1 role each week to have massive production. As for my prediction this week, the Hawkeyes will have their way with Illinois State, and the Redbirds were middle of the pack in the Missouri Valley Conference last year, and even with a subpar offense, Iowa should be able to find the end zone a few times. My final score prediction is Iowa 24, Illinois State 14. What do you got, Colin?
And AJ, you can say whatever you want about having your role last year, but I'm looking to take that. But, before I get there, we're first going to just talk about how, I think Iowa's going to have a terrific season. They're going to be looking extremely well as a team, but however, got to be a little bit of a Debbie Downer. I think they're going to go 10-2, which means they're probably just going to miss out in the college football playoff as long as some other teams do pretty well. I know that's not what Iowa fans want to hear, and I think they're capable of an 11-1 season, but something in my gut just says it's not going to happen. I agree with the consensus that they're going to lose in the shoe to Ohio State, but for that to be the only loss on the season would require a lot of focus and no hocus pocus for the Hawkeyes, and while knowing Iowa's luck, I think there's going to be some trickery somewhere along the way. I see that second loss coming at home against Wisconsin, which pains me to say as a Cincinnati native, losing to the hometown traitor, Luke Fickell, but if the Hawks were to slip up somewhere, I think it would be a tough rivalry matchup. Now going to my breakout player, I'm going to stick with an offensive guy as well. I'm going with transfer wide receiver Jacob Gill. He came from Northwestern with Brendan Sullivan, and I think this receiving core could really use his help and that depth with him joining them. He only had 1 reception last year for 11 yards, but if Iowa wants to really improve their offense, they'll have to throw the ball better and a little bit more and aim for guys like Gill, allowing him to be my breakout star. And I think you could see this immediately on Saturday as I have the Hawkeyes winning 38-10. These are the type of games where Iowa can really put together some good drives and click in the red zone. I know it won't all be perfect. I expect a few field goals, and I think Illinois State will still move the ball a bit, but be shut down by the Hawkeye defense for the most part. Yeah, so Brady, I've got the Hawks starting out 1-0, even though I don't have them making the newly expanded college football playoff. So I'm curious to see, where do you got them going this year?
Let's get right into it. I'm honestly disappointed in all of you guys. I have the Hawkeyes going 11-1 this season. That's right, 11-1. Their only loss will come at the hands of Ohio State in the shoe. Now, I'm a little worried about rivals like Wisconsin, Nebraska, and even Iowa State, believe it or not, but this is the year for the Hawkeyes. They have the easiest schedule they're ever going to have in the Big Ten, avoiding national championship contenders like Oregon, Michigan, USC, but this is their chance to make the college football playoff, and if it doesn't happen this season, it might just never happen. Now for my breakout player, I've got my eyes on new starting cornerback TJ Hall. Hall was a 3-star recruit out of high school, and he got some playing time in all 13 games his freshman year. Last year, he played in just a few games before getting hurt and missing the rest of the season. But now, coming into his 3rd year at Iowa, he's getting the starting nod at CB2 alongside Jamari Harris, and I trust Phil Parker to have his defensive back room ready to rock and roll to start this year. Finally, my score prediction for this week is a big-time Hawkeye win, 35-6. I've got the Hawkeye defense bending a few times to one of the better teams at the FCS level, but I don't have them breaking. On offense, the Hawkeyes are confident that their offensive line has taken that next step to be on par with the standard at Iowa, and that running back room is packed with talent. McNamara is finally healthy, and Luke Lachey is returning to the field, so I expect big things from this new-look Hawkeye offense.
Yeah, Brady, I like your pick there with Illinois State. I like everyone's, picking the Hawkeyes. I think it's one of those games where it might be an easier pick, but 11-1 for their season, that might be a little too bold for my taste.
Well, Colin, I have confidence in this Hawkeye team. But that's it for us today, and thank you, AJ and Johnny, and especially you for tuning in to the season premiere of Before the Kickoff.
Check out the Daily Island website and YouTube page for all the latest on everything Hawkeye sports. From the University of Iowa, I'm Colin Carruthers.
And I'm Brady Barron. Have a wonderful weekend of football.